it will not be public. It will be a private stream going to YouTube. I'm just going to double check my settings just to make sure that it is me. Let's double check the layout. I'm going to put myself on Spotlight. And I'm going to do an official kind of welcome. Welcome, everybody. It's really good to have you with us for this very first session in the new year for LimbPower and LimbPower members. We're going to do some Tai Chi and Qigong movements, and I've got a set of movements for you. A little bit of housekeeping is move comfortably. Feel free to sit and observe. We roughly need about an arm's width of space around us. If you are seated, that's okay. If you're going to be standing up, that's okay. And if you're going to swap between the two, again, I don't know your personal state and I don't need to, but again, I'm asking you to kind of use your common sense and look after yourself. That's all we need. We just need some arm space. What we're going to do is do the Shibashi set, which Shibashi simply means 18 in Chinese. Let me do a little screen share because I can do that. I'll do it very quickly because you're not here to go through a PowerPoint or anything like that. But I'll send this out to folks. So you should see that I've got a little document open now. It says the Shibashi Qigong set. It was originated in 1979. There's all the movements, and I've written some blurb. So I'm going to send this out to folks so that you can have a copy of this for yourselves. But that's what we're going to aim to do over the next few weeks or so. So I hope that is piquing your interest. And as I say, move within a comfortable range of motion. It may be that you can't necessarily lift an arm or arms overhead. It may be that you have upper limb amputations. Again, in that respect, I will be talking about hands and feet, even though, like me, you might be missing a leg or two legs or various limbs. I can't speak to each and every one of you in terms of your personal condition. So I will talk about hands and feet, even if we personally don't have them, just as reference points. I might demonstrate movements from a seated as well as a standing position, again, for those people. And I do recognize that sometimes standing up is actually one of the more onerous tasks for people with lower limb amputations as well. I think that's enough. This group, I hope, is going to be emergent and evolving as we go forward based on your feedback. And that's about it. And within the sessions, I'm going to be introducing themes and principles that hopefully are going to help you with your practice and hopefully that you can build into your everyday life. I've just noticed that I've got my glasses on my head. I'm going to take those off, put them there. Okay, so without further ado, we're going to get started. I'm going to push my seat back a bit. There we go. So I've got a bit of arm space, and our first movement is called Qi Shi. If you wanted that written down, it's with a Q-I-S-H-I, which isn't exactly how you would think it was pronounced, but Qi Shi means to raise power. So if you're seated with me, hands on your knees. If you're standing up, hands just resting by the sides. Very simply, we're going to pick the hands up, shoulder height, and then gently let them settle down. And then we're going to pick them up again. See if you can keep the shoulder girdle nice and relaxed. Sometimes there's a tendency to let the shoulder girdle lift, but we want to see if we can keep it nice and relaxed and just let the arms do the talking. I'm just going to turn to the side. You keep going, just so you can see. Hands don't go too high. And I want you to imagine that your hands and fingers are like two medium, kind of stiff paintbrushes, painting two vertical lines. Just like so. That's it. It might be that you feel like a big in-breath as we lift the hands, and then you just let that breath go. That's all we're going to say about the breathing, is that I want you to be just very intuitive about it. Just let yourself breathe naturally. But every now and again, you just might go, oh, this just feels so right for a big in-breath. So do so and let it go. Okay, we're going to change as we pick up, and now we're going to open the hands and arms out and then close and then lower. So this movement gets called a few things. Opening the chest, opening the shoulders would be the most obvious. Just like so. Once again, this movement lends itself to a big in-breath if you feel like it, and then an out-breath. But again, don't force the breathing. Might be that you just do it every now and again. Opening, closing. These are all elements of Tai Chi, of yin and yang. An opening aspect, that would be the yang, and a closing aspect, that would be the yin. Very simple. We'll do it one more time. One and down. Okay, just have a little shake out, because there's a lot of work going on in the shoulders, isn't there? Within the first opening movements, there's a lot centered around the upper body. As we move on, again, for those people who are standing up, there'll be some steps, little steps and shifts of weight. But for now, we're just centered here. Next movement, called various things, but embracing rainbows is a very nice name. So we're going to pick the hands up. They're going to go overhead or overhead-ish. And then pick a side, right or left, and imagine that you're holding a large kind of exercise ball between the hands, and just have a little tilt to one side. Back up. Do the same to the opposite side. So you're going to get a little bit of a stretch as you do so. We're not turning this into a big stretch. So it's not like yoga perhaps, or other movement modalities where you really seek out a big stretch. We're just feeling that point where it begins to feel a bit stretchy, if that's a word. And then that's our cue to stop. So again, just work within a range of motion that suits you. Again, you may find that you have more range of motion on one side versus the other. So work within those differences. Don't try to force things, because that would be very un-Tai Chi to force things. We're going to go once more to each side. Don't worry if we're out of sync. Doesn't matter. Again, we want this to be a place where there's no pressure. And then once again, let those hands just fall away. Have a little shake out. Our next movement is called parting the clouds. It's really simple. I'm going to cross the hands in front of the chest, turn the palms forward, and then open up. And then let the hands fall away to the sides. And when they get down to the very bottom, you're going to cross them with the opposite hand in front this time. Again, remember I said hands and feet are relative terms for people like us living with limb loss. and just alternate hands like so. Again, you may go, this feels so good for an in-breath. So just have a big in-breath. It feels right to do so. And an out-breath on the down. Perfect movement for a morning. It's a very good morning type exercise. Excellent. Again, maybe there's a clue in the name, parting the clouds, that there's a sense of creating some clarity for yourself. Okay, let's do this 2 more times. Strictly speaking, there's no prescription, shall we say, for how many repetitions of a movement that we do. But as you can see, we do a few, shall we say. 8 is maybe a reasonable number to think of if you do want to count. But again, don't get too caught up in how many times should I do this. Do it for as many times as you feel. If you perhaps, I've had a bit of a chest infection, so I've been low in energy. So I've done far less in terms of the amount of movement than I would do when I'm feeling 100% and fit and healthy. So again, I want you to use your common sense. Don't force yourself to do something if you're feeling unwell simply because it's prescribed. Again, listen to your body. Tai Chi, Qigong, and the philosophy from which it stems is a listening philosophy. We pay attention to ourselves, we pay attention to the world around us, we pay attention to other people around us as well. So again, there's this reciprocal, mutual kind of element within the philosophy that underpins Tai Chi. Okay, let's do another movement, shall we? So this one involves some rotation. So as I said, you need a little bit of arm space. I'm going to turn to the right. So let's be a little bit more directive, shall we? We're going to look over our right shoulder. And if it's possible, just lift the hands, the palms up. And then push that right palm, the back hand forward as if pushing. And as you do so, the left hand goes behind you. Look to that hand, turn the right hand over, and now you're going to push the left hand forward. Watch it go forward, and then pick up the right hand as it goes behind you, and we end up in our start position on that right side. And then once again, push the right hand forward, turning head and shoulders. Look to the left hand as it goes behind, and then push that one forward too. Take your time. This movement gets called rolling arms, but it comes from Yang style Tai Chi, and the movement from Yang style Tai Chi is called repulse the monkey. If any of you go swimming, you may have come across a term that you have a good feel for the water with your hands. In Tai Chi terms, we want to have a feel for the air. So I want you to see if you can have that sense that as you bring whichever hand forward, that you can actually almost feel as though you're pushing through the air, or that you've got a feel for the air as we do so. So I'm just letting us move through this. If it's got too tiring for you, do have a rest, but if you can, do a couple more, one on each side. And just bear in mind that sense of having a feel for the air. So whichever side you're on, again, don't worry which, just let that hand come forward and then let the hands melt away. Excellent. So that is the first 5 movements of Shibashi. There's 18. In fact, that's what Shibashi means, 18. It's as simple as that. It's a little bit like Ron Seal. It does exactly what it says. 18 movements. There's a part 1, that's what we're doing, and then there's a part 2. So it might be that as we progress, we move into part 2. But again, you can let me know how you found those movements. Okay. I'm hoping that we can go over sort of 7 o'clock-ish by about 5 minutes or so, because I know we had a bit of a chat at the beginning where I did housekeeping and things. So I'm hoping that you're okay for at least 5 minutes past 7 o'clock. And I'm just seeing that Helen, you raised your hand. Did you have a question or are you okay? Can you just unmute yourself, Helen, and just say, no, is that okay? Was that
sorry, that was fine. It was just I was trying to see to put if there was a thumbs up. But I had the wrong symbol because this is the first time I'm using it.
That's okay.
But yes, thumbs up.
Okay, wonderful. Don't you just love technology? Okay, let's finish this Shibashi set at least with the closing movement, the 18th movement, because it's a really nice closing movement. So I want you to just pick the hands up, bring them in towards you, and then just let them press down gently or settle. And then forwards again, draw in towards you, down. Once again. It's a nice kind of gathering sensation. So we'll do this on every session. We're doing the Shibashi set because it kind of gives us an indication that we're bringing things to a close. But we haven't finished yet. It's just the end of Shibashi. Okay. So I'm going to stand up. Again, if you're remaining seated, that's okay. But I said I would stand up and sit down on occasion. So I'm going to stand up, move my box, and I'll have to step back a little bit. I'm hoping that you can still see me reasonably well. And we're going to give me a wave with your left hand, if you can. I'm hoping. Again, as I say, hands are relative, and we're going to sweep that hand across to the right side. If you can, you're going to take hold of your right hip, and then you're going to look to your right hand and imagine that it's a wing, and you do a little wing beat, and then you let that hand settle, and then we're going to turn to the left, and my left hand comes across, or left arm to the left side. And now my left arm lifts as I look to it like a wing beat, and then to the other side. Once again. To the right side, to the left. So it should feel like a very gentle little wing beat. If you wish, you can begin to extend that arm a little higher, i.e. it's a bit more of a pronounced wing beat, so that hand goes a little bit higher. I want you to imagine, again, if you can, that your fingers are feathers on a wing. And again, there's a feel for the air. So these are very classical notions within the Chinese arts of Tai Chi, Kung Fu, even the performing arts, of having a feel for the air, of having a sense that there's some tactility that we can tune into, even if it's just the coolness of the air against our skin. So it really brings us into focus. I'm going to do one more. This is my left side. Again, don't worry if you've ended up out of sync. Wonderful. Okay. If you're standing up with me, fab. If you sat down, fab as well. But we're going to do some weight shift. Again, this is an essential element within Tai Chi. So whether you're standing up or sat down, I want you to shift some weight either to the left or to the right. If you sat down, you're basically shifting more weight onto one hip and then shifting weight back to the other. The analogy I like to make when I'm doing this sat down is that you've been on a long car journey and you're beginning to feel rather numb and you need to move about in that seat. If you're standing up with me, then we're seeing if we can shift weight, and depending, you may have bilateral amputations of lower limbs, or you might be like me with a unilateral amputation, notwithstanding that you might have other musculoskeletal issues. I do. But just this gentle shift of weight, even if you sat down, we're trying to get weight from one side to the other. Another analogy that you might help you with is that you're on a boat, not a small boat, but a largish boat that's just gently rocking from side to side, and you're just going with that motion. And it's important, certainly within the context of Tai Chi and Qigong, that we're able to comfortably shift our weight from side to side, even if it means putting weight on the amputated side, for instance. Again, if you're bilateral lower limb amputee, you don't have any choice. But again, this ability to put load down one side is really important. It's what's required, isn't it, if we need to walk. We need to be able to do this, again, even if we're a wheelchair user, in terms of managing our weight and balance on cambers, on a pavement, and uneven surfaces that might be sloping away. We all require us to be able to do this compensation. So as simple as that is, it's a really core skill for balance. And it's one that you can practice any time. Again, Tai Chi takes simple elements, simple movements, and we get to focus on those. And if we practice them in very simple ways, then they become embodied skills over time. Very simply, I want you to have this idea that you're a bit more childlike. Children push boundaries, don't they? They explore movements, they test the boundaries of what they can and can't do with their bodies through play. As adults, we sometimes lose those ideas of play or exploration. It's one of the reasons why we're called Discover Tai Chi, that we're helping you begin to discover the boundaries of your movement and then begin to see if you can push those boundaries a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to stay standing and we're going to repeat the first two movements of that Shibashi set, but I'm just going to add some extra elements in as well. So here we go with Chi Shi again. So So I want you to have this sense, because within Tai Chi we have a very important principle called intent. What's the intent of the movement? And sometimes there's a clue in the name of the movement, such as parting clouds, for instance, or this movement called to raise power, which isn't necessarily a very good translation of a Chinese. I like to think of this movement as a non-verbal way of you making a commitment. And I like to put it in the context that if you walked into a classroom of nursery-aged children, and then it was all very noisy, and you needed to back up your verbal direction for things to calm down, but you might go, calm down, folks, calm down, everyone, with this hand gesture. That's the intent. I want you to have the idea that you're creating a space for yourself that settles and calms down. Get the idea? So we can just move the arms, but if we begin to think about intent, then those movements begin to have meaning. Okay, let's do the second movement where we take this lift, but then we open it out. So one way of thinking of the intent for this movement, and someone in our class this afternoon kind of hit the nail on the head, is ta-da! You get what I mean? It's an announcement that here I am. And then you close again. It's like opening the curtains and announcing yourself. Da-da, here I am. And then closing again. So again, there's a sense of opening, a sense of a little bit of vulnerability even, or of exposure before we close again. Again, we can't get any more open really in our posture than simply opening our hands and arms. It's kind of what you see in performances, in drama, in sport even. What do we see when an athlete or a sports person scores a goal or wins a race? They often open their arms wide, don't they? There's a sense of being open, but it's also an embrace all at the same time. So again, now we've got an intent for that movement as well. Does that make sense? Does that kind of give you a sense that we've got layers that we can explore within these sessions that hopefully lend your movements a greater sense of depth and meaning? I hope so. Right, I'm going to sit back down and we'll begin to kind of bring things to a close, because I appreciate we've gone over time a little bit, but I'm hoping that's okay. So again, give me a wave with a right hand, and if possible, cover your heart with that hand. And then the left hand, if you give me a wave, falls right below onto the lower abdomen, just below your navel. You might just want to take a big breath and then let it go. And hopefully you can feel your heartbeat under the palm of your right hand. And the rise of your rib cage as you breathe in, and then the fall of your rib cage as you breathe out. And you can just breathe and feel that sensation. We're being incredibly physical. We're connected to our breath. and the muscular pump of our heart. Basically, you can't get any more essential than this when we think about life. Breathing and the heartbeat. And they've got a rhythm. Life has a rhythm. So again, you've got your own individual rhythm. Just tune into that. And then take this top hand, let it slip down the rib cage. It will fall off the rib cage at some point onto a soft squidgy bit. Sometimes we call it the solar plexus. And we're going to let the right hand, rest there. It's literally above the left hand. And again, just breathe. Don't try and do anything clever. Just be aware that you're breathing. We've lost the sensation of a heartbeat. That's okay. We still know it's there. And just breathe. A few breaths. Don't force things though. And finally, bring that top hand, the right hand down so that it covers that left hand. Both hands are in this bottom position now. And again, we've lost the rise and fall of a rib cage, but we still know we're breathing. So just tune into that rhythm without controlling it. It's a bit like music. You've got to get out of the way of yourself in order to let the music play, if there's any musicians in the room. So we can just let ourselves breathe. And then when you're ready, part the hands. That's your cue to say that we've finished that breath exercise. But that's a really simple and quite old awareness exercise, breath awareness exercise that you could use anytime, any place. Makes a really good bedtime routine. Do it lying down if you wish. It can really help kind of settle yourself. The 3-stage process of bringing that hand down is a nice kind of 3-stage process for our minds to get the sense that, yeah, we're settling down, we're slowing down. And that might help get you off to sleep, perhaps. So that's it, folks. I'm going to, first of all, get the recording stopped. If people want to unmute themselves, please do. And if anyone has any comments or questions, I'm going to unpin my